Okay, good evening, members, officers. Thank you very much for joining us this evening for Cabinet. There were 24 items on the agenda. There is actually only going to be 23 items this evening. I will explain more when we get to it. It won't make too much of a difference. We'll still be here all night, but we will crack on. The first is apologies for absence. We are a full house, so there are no apologies. General item number 2, declarations of interest. Do I have any declarations from members? We'll take the Essex County Councils en bloc. Were you waving at me? No? Good. Any others? Okay, so we have 3 county members, so we'll take them. The decision records, agenda item 3, the minutes, which are on pages 7 to 18. Are there any matters arising from the minutes of the Cabinet meeting held on the 13th of March? In which case, all those in favour of them being recorded as a true record, please show. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 4 are the CMDRs, which are listed on page 19. Does any Cabinet member, there's only Adele, have anything you want to talk about with your CMDR?
No.
Okay, very good. Does any Leader of the Opposition have anything to... Very good. It's all going to plan. Agenda item number 5 is the Cabinet Work Programme on page 21 and 22. Are there any matters? Are you holding that pen up to ask a question? No. The Cabinet member, the Work Programme, is there any member wish to add anything to the Work Programme? Everybody is happy. Any comments from Leaders of the Opposition? Very good. Agenda item number 6 is Cabinet member updates. Any Cabinet member wish to make an update this evening? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Leader. The first thing I would just like to say is that in line with our corporate ambitions over the last year to be able to drive participation and activities for young people and put the young people at the heart of all activities that we provide, Councillor McGurran and I were delighted to be able to go to the Basildon Sporting Village 2 weeks ago for the launch of Everybody Loves a Friday Night in partnership with Flex Youth Hub, a brilliant activity and lots of programmes taking place. I'm also delighted to be able to update members to the work of tennis courts that are taking place within Lake Meadows and Mopsy's Park that will be driving sports participation across the borough, particularly as we start our work of Summer of Sport that will be taking place. And who knows, we may be able to find the next Andy Murray and Emma Raducanu right here in Basildon, who we will be supporting. I would also like to take this opportunity to update members about the announcements from the Basildon, Billericay and Wickford Council for Voluntary Services following the scrutiny meeting that took place at the end of during March. I'm aware that there's been a number of statements that have been made about the CVS service, and I would like to be able to update members and provide a true record of where discussions are currently up to at this stage. The CVS is an independent charity who this council has supported over many, many years, and I'm proud of the support that this council has been able to provide and maintained our level of financial support for the CVS over many years. They provide valuable work for charities and other organisations across the borough and have been a really important partner for us to be able to work with. At the meeting in March, they announced their intention to close due to a lack of funding and lack of security of funding coming through for the forthcoming years. There can be no doubt that changes in funding criteria and reductions in funding and elimination of funding from external partners, including those from Essex County Council, have played a significant role in the decision for the CVS to be able to continue functioning. Immediately after the meeting, I gave assurances to members at the scrutiny meeting on the 6th of March. Immediately at that meeting, I gave assurances that I would write to the Cabinet member responsible at Essex County Council requesting meetings to be able to discuss the finances and funding going forward. I have met with the Cabinet member and will continue to do so. I also gave assurances to members that I would work with any interested party, any organisation, any member of the council that wishes to support in keeping the CVS running and looking at the functions of the CVS services. Following that meeting, I received a request last week to be able to meet with members of the council and the shadow cabinet member responsible. That meeting took place earlier this week. During the intervening period, I have had a number of meetings taking place with the CVS, looking at the services they currently provide, looking at possible solutions that they could explore if they chose to. Those meetings have taken place over many weeks. There's been many of them, and officers have also given time and devoted significant amounts of time to those meetings. The announcement from the CVS has been made, and those discussions will still continue. Those discussions and meetings with the CVS will still continue over the coming weeks, and I'll keep council updated. But I repeat my plea that I gave at the scrutiny meeting on the 6th of March, that I will work with anybody and any interested party that wants to continue and bring funding to the table to enable the CVS to continue to exist, and that includes Essex County Council. And I repeat that plea to them tonight to be able to join us at the table and keep the CVS running as an organisation. But in the meantime, I have asked officers, and officers are working on all options for the services that they currently run to be able to see how they could continue in whichever shape or form the CVS looks to in the future. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, and I would endorse that. It'd be terrible to be closing CVSs and then trying to ask people to make you the mayor, wouldn't it? Any other cabinet member have anything they wish to add? No. Okay. In which case, we're going to move on to agenda item number 7, which is the temporary accommodation elimination plan, and this is Councillor Brown.
I've been asked to be short, so I will be. As we all know, temporary accommodation has been a rising problem in this borough. But what we're looking at here is ways in which we can mitigate that and ways in which we can reduce that. And this whole point of this is to think about how we can ultimately get to a point where we have an elimination of temporary accommodation, but we're not expecting people to raise their kids in that circumstances nor live that way. You will see from the paper that we've made clear progress over the last year, that we've managed to massively reduce it from 23 families down to just 1 that are in breach. And we all know that 1 family is too many, but when we consider the humongous work it takes and effort it takes from our officers to just get 1 of those families into accommodation that's a secure home, this is a huge achievement. So I'd just like to thank Kirsty and her whole team for that. But it's also about thinking about cost. You'll notice in the paper it talks about the monies that we're spending in order to be more proactive, to help families not lose their homes. So prevent homelessness before it happens. We know that prevention is much better than cure, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper. That's really all I'd like to emphasise at this moment, but happy to take questions.
Okay, does any Leader of the Opposition have any questions on this? Councillor Barnes.
Can I, first of all, just thank you for inviting me tonight and introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Councillor Andy Barnes. I'm the leader of the Conservative group. So I'm looking forward to playing my part in these meetings. It's never the easiest role to be Leader of the Opposition when you're up against the entire Cabinet, but I will do my best to be as proactive and as constructive as I can be. Just around the temporary accommodation, I think, broadly speaking, I like what this is doing in terms of getting out ahead of the issues. I think from our point of view, in terms of holding it to account, what we would be looking at is, we're obviously talking about spending £500,000 up front. We are going to need to make sure that delivers tangible results. And reading through it, where I think, whilst I accept the thing about the breaches and stuff, and that's good that we've got those down to a much more manageable level, but I think we all agree that any families in temporary accommodation is something that we want to try and avoid as much as is practically possible. So I hope that we will be able to use this money in a way that means it doesn't just disappear into the ether, and that it does have tangible results. And I'll be looking certainly through both the Cabinet and scrutiny to make sure that that this does actually deliver what it claims it will deliver. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that we're fully aware that almost £1.9 million is a hell of a lot of money, and it's important that we spend it in a credible way. This grant that's come from our Labour government is ensuring that we're able to bring this plan forward. Without that grant and without our present Labour government, this whole programme would not be able to be implemented. I think it's really important to say that. But you're right, Councillor Barnes, we do need to make sure that we monitor this. But what I would say is, by going down the prevention route, by giving landlords incentives to work with us. This is not a gamble. This is a proven way across the country of ensuring that less families end up in this predicament. And so I'd just like to say that, yes, it's cost-effective strategy. Yes, we are going to monitor it and ensure that the success of this programme has clear outcomes, but also along that way is definitely looked at and comes back to Cabinet with those figures. And I'd be more than happy 6 months' time to review this for you, Councillor, to bring it back to Cabinet and for us all to be able to see what success we've been able to have with this programme.
Thank you. I would add on this. I think we've probably had 2 cabinet meetings in the last year where we haven't discussed temporary accommodation. Like it has been the number one issue that has been on our agenda. It is clearly the biggest pressure in the budget in terms of. No. The bins were always,
fix that now.
the bins were fixable. This is slightly out of our control. But I do think when you look at it, obviously, as Councillor Brown has said, we are in receipt of a sizable amount of money from the Labour government to help us to deliver this. But part of the breakdown on this, when you're talking about 75 grand to clear arrears, 20 grand for furniture, 200,000 for a landlord incentive scheme, all of that is good stuff. But there is a slight sour taste in my mouth that the Household Support Fund exists to also be supporting with this stuff. And Basildon Council is not in receipt of that money because it is hoarded by Essex County Council. That should be about £330,000 of additional money coming into Basildon Council every year. Now, we have no real idea and real monitoring of whether or not we're getting that £300,000. I've made this argument to Number 10 since last year that it should be devolved down to the districts, not hoarded at the county level. Because some of this money, I mean, it's great, don't be wrong, £495,000 is a substantial amount of money. There should have been another 660,000 over the course of the last 2 years that has been going into this that we should have been able to use for lots of these schemes. So obviously we will do everything we can. I have visited nearly all of the B&Bs and the hotels that we have been using previously. It's not a cost-effective way of doing it, and it is not somewhere that you would want to be for any longer than you have to be. But from our point of view, I think we have to continue to do everything we can, use this money as prudently as we can, and hopefully the private sector housing market will start to recover in this borough at some point, because that is a large part of why we are seeing the pressure that we are. Ever since Liz Truss crashed the economy in September 2022, the housing market in Basildon the private sector housing market has all but collapsed. LHA rates do not keep pace. We've said this multiple times here. There's no signs yet that will change. So we have to do the prevention work that has been outlined in this report. Councillor Smith, you wanted to come in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When we came into administration this time last year, this was the thing that was going to sink the ship, because we saw 3 years of doing nothing. It was complete chaos what we walked into. So I spent that last year fixing things up with yourself, leader, trying to get the funding. But a lot of this, and this is to relieve the concerns of Councillor Barnes, is common sense things. If someone's housing benefit cap is £100 a month or something like that out, we can top that up. Because if we don't, they cost the taxpayer, every homeless family in bed and breakfast, 25 grand a year. So the hole in the ship has been fixed, but is still seeping water. And Councillor Brown is carrying on the work that we started to try and seal that, to keep this council solvent, because when people pay their council tax, they want to see their parks cut, they want to see these particular services. They don't want to see the lion's share of their council tax lying in the pocket of hard-nosed landlords who are packing and stacking our unfortunate homeless families. And we've had other measures which we've spoken about before to acquire property, which is going quite well. And it's been quite successful in Billericay and Wickford to make sure they're for Basildon people, not London Borough people. And just to conclude, the leader spoke about the county council getting the money we're due from government. Would he correct me if I'm wrong, that the authority that Essex County Council has nominated, because they're incompetent to do it themselves, is taking a 12.5% cut called administration, which is our money, but county's giving it to another authority because they're incapable of making payments.
Yes, I can confirm that that is true. Southend are the authority that administer it on behalf of the county and the districts. We have made, I think I wrote 3 times last year to Louise McKinley, who you may know is seeking to be the mayor of Essex, to ask her to think again and actually ensure that that money gets into the pockets of people who are desperate and really need it, rather than being wasted on admin fees and all the rest of it. But unfortunately, she did not listen. Are there any other points on this? No, in which case the recommendations are on page 23. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item number 8 is the homelessness strategy. And Councillor Brown, this is you.
Yeah, nobody said housing was going to be this jam tonight, but anyway. Yeah, so the homeless strategy sort of follows on from the work that teams have been doing with the TA. We know that we have issues around homelessness and the ways in which this council has aimed historically to tackle that, and how the housing market has changed such that we need to start to rethink about the way in which we prevent homeless and what that looks like in terms of our strategy. So what we're looking at here is the evidence clear demand for temporary accommodation in Basildon has more than doubled since 2018. We're now looking at a cost of around 4 million if it continued. So this strategy, what it aims to do is to ensure that our homeless strategy puts prevention first, and therefore the action plan is completely targeted around the evidence base, looking at how we can intervene from the very start and ensure that our families aren't put in this situation. Obviously this aligns with the ambitions of the MHCLG in terms of trying to minimise temporary accommodation, and you can see that the national strategy within the report and the way in which Basildon is using that to ensure that not only do we align with the ambitions of our central government, but we're able to do what's right for the residents here in Basildon. And obviously this completely aligns with our whole ambition when it comes to building more homes, when it comes to ensuring that every person within this borough has the right to a decent home. And this strategy looks at, through consultation, the lived experience of those residents, and ensures that our consultation looks at that real need and is reflective in our policies of what those residents desire in order to have a homeless strategy that is effective.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Does any Leader of the Opposition have any questions on this? Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to reassure everybody who wants to get home at some point tonight, I'm not going to speak on every item, but this obviously is a very important issue, so I just wanted to touch on it. I actually had a couple of queries on this one, if possible. On page 70, the report mentions that there was a spike in numbers sleeping rough in 2024. I wondered if we had any idea why that might have been. And also on page 75, there's a series of charts that show the obviously significant increase in spending on hotel placements, and I just wondered if, based on the information we have presently, where the next sort of 24-25 chart would sit. Would it be going down? Would it be increasing up again? Broadly speaking, I think it's a good document. I congratulate the officers who have worked on it. I would possibly again like to see more around sort of tangible outcomes. So I mean, it talks about the average household spends 42 days in a form of accommodation, with an average of 453 days spent in temporary accommodation. I just wondered if, you know, that was going to become something that we targeted to, because those are the real tangible things that affect people's real lives. And we can talk about charts and statistics and money and all the rest of it, but the thing that really affects somebody is the length of time they spend in temporary accommodation without a home. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Phil's going to come in and explain some of the data and what that projection looks like for you. I'm happy to answer questions as well, but I think it will be helpful if you hear from Phil. Thanks. Thanks, Phil.
Hello, yes, with regard to the question around the increase in individuals sleeping rough, we've seen predominantly an increase in people that have been discharged from home office accommodation. We've seen that ramping up as they've sought to discharge their backlogs. We have a number of overflow dispersal accommodation in the borough, and these are predominantly occupied by single males who may not necessarily fit the thresholds for priority need to have assistance with homelessness duties, which has contributed to a large degree to the amount of rough sleeping in the borough. And there was a question as well around the trajectory of temporary accommodation. We have kicked off some work over the last month around the figures in temporary accommodation. We have seen a week-on-week decrease, admittedly in small numbers, but we are seeing it going in the right direction, and the pillars, the 5 pillars that we built this strategy around, are all geared around reducing the use of temporary accommodation and the amount of time that's spent in it, so we're confident that this will give us the best tools to tackle that.
Thanks, Phil.
Kirsty,
Kirsty, did you want to come in?
Yeah, so in terms of monitoring, this plan forms, the elimination plan lays over the top of this. So we report all of our data and outcomes to MHCLG and through the Housing Improvement Board in terms of internal governance, and this will also be coming regularly through housing scrutiny. Because of the vast amount of acquisitions that have been made in the past year, but also going forward into next year, we will see a reduction in B&B and hotel because we are making permanent acquisitions, so that spend will come down due to the capital acquisitions that have been made. Some significant acquisitions are coming through in March 2026, so we would see this significantly start to drop due to that. We've also, as part of the elimination plan and the homelessness strategy, driving work with landlords and leasing and trying to work through the Renters Reform Bill to get more secure accommodation that people can access with their LHA rate and with the support through the elimination plan. So all of those statistics are corporate KPIs, and they are reported both through scrutiny and through the Housing Improvement Board, which is a resident and tenant-centred panel.
Thank you, Kirsty. I mean, you can't be complacent on this because we need to keep the trajectory going, but from the sounds of it, it's almost like we know what we're doing, and the strategies are all working, and everything that we've put in place over the last 12 months are going in the right direction. Councillor Smith?
Councillor McGeorge,
Yes.
I heard you say something. It sounded like you're taking me out to dinner and not what you implied for speaking. Seriously, I think when we talk about this, what everyone mentions is look at what housing benefit will pay outside of London and go on Rightmove and look up a family home. This is the cause of the problem. Ever since we had that lettuce in Downing Street, that was just throwing gallons of petrol on a fire, so people may have a full-time job, young family, but they don't earn a lot. They can't pay the rent because the landlord's thinking, well, my mortgage went through the roof, so the rent will have to go through the roof, and they're becoming homeless. This is what's made this situation so much worse, and it's going to take years of hard work to correct this fault. And I'll leave it there, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
I think it's really important to see, and as you look through the whole agenda, you'll see the way in which each of these policies interlink, the way we're trying to reduce TA, the leader's strategy of buying up properties rather than just paying for B&B, despite people's not thinking it would work, it is working. It's reducing that bill. We can therefore use that money in other ways to support families so they're not in a situation where they become homeless and therefore add to that TA cost for the council, but also the nightmare for those families. So I hope you can see the way in which these policies are interlinking, each of those work streams, the way in which they support each other, and the way in which the housing team are really starting to get grips to this. So thank you for all the work.
I would echo that. I'd also say thank you to Councillor Mike Baker for what was a very, very diligent scrutiny committee. All 100 and whatever pages, line by line of it. Nobody could accuse us of not scrutinising this strategy. We did that, and we've captured lots of the feedback. The recommendations are on page 41. All those in favour, please show. Members, show. Put your hands up. Thank you. That's unanimous. Agenda item number 9 is the Safer Communities Estate and Town Centre enforcement. This is Councillor Smith. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll translate this into my style of speaking, not officer speak. Sounds more authentic. You've all read your agendas to start with. Crime is our top priority, and making residents safe is very important. This model will operate across 2 key areas: safer estates, tackling antisocial behaviour, waste and tenancy breaches. That's very important. That they've already done with my Pride team lead in one street in Langdon Hills that was being plagued with fly tipping. I was told this evening 5 names and addresses are found. Thanks to Councillor McGowan, the bins are back to weekly, and we will enforce it because people want to take a pride in where they live. And if people are using their streets as their own tip, no excuse. We will throw the book at them. This month we have launched a strategic tasking group with the community safety team, coordinating intelligence across the departments to target localised issues, whether it's fly tipping, nuisance behaviour or tenancy fraud. The second point, safer town centres. Supporting enforcement of new public space protection orders and creating a stronger presence for enforcement officers. In July, our aim is to introduce a dedicated team of 5 officers and 1 supervisor working seasonal hours in Basildon and Pitsea town centres to address public concerns, especially after dark. This team will support regenerating and growing our nighttime economy. And I think this next point is very important. The rise of these wallies on social media are very unpleasant to ladies, you know, like them too, the Romanian government wishes to deport, and quite rightly so. The current statistics identified when developing the Violence Against Women and Girls Safety Charter demonstrates that 75% of residents feel safe in the high street in daylight hours. Only 37% feel safe after dark. There's a high perception of the fear of crime across the borough, and this project will look to provide resources with a level of visibility that communities feel safe while using town centres and within estates. We are also reviewing our enforcement contract with consideration to bring in activity in-house where possible. This will give us greater flexibility and potential to retain more income from fixed penalty notice, while ensuring enforcement remains fair, proportionate and focused on prevention and not profit. I think that's what residents want. Fair, but justice. Alongside this, we will modernise our CCTV infrastructure, and thanks to you, Leader, with your work, obtaining the UK Shared Prosperity Fund support. This will improve our monitoring capabilities and provide real-time support to the police and council teams on the ground. Members may recall an incident earlier this year in Councillor McGarren's ward where a very dangerous weapon was waved around in the town centre. Because of that CCTV, a person was caught and the streets were made safer. In conclusion, all of this work is about creating safer spaces and more responsive services, but it's also about trusting to ensure residents see and feel the presence of police officers and our officers. That action is taken when problems are reported and that we're all working together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Does any member of the opposition wish to comment on this? No. In which case, does any member of the Cabinet wish to speak on this? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Smith, for bringing this forward tonight. As St Martin's councillor, I'm all too well aware of the challenges that residents have brought up on many occasions around town centre safety, around access to our parks, and the challenges that they've identified, things that they've seen, and what action they want this council to be able to take. In my cabinet portfolio as a cabinet member responsible for young people, I've also had many families come to me with concerns around wanting their children to be out, but also not feeling safe within our community. So I think it's really important with this policy and with the action that we're taking tonight, we're sending a very clear message to residents that we prioritise community safety. It's at the heart of the work that we're doing, and that Basildon is going to be a safe place for our residents, and that our town centre is welcome and open for all to be able to visit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I echo, as a fellow St Martin's ward member, exactly what you've said there. The other thing that I would just add as well is that obviously this crosses between community safety, Mr. Hendry's team and others. But I will just put on record in my area, in the corporate resources area, the legal team as well, because we are in the courts virtually every week at the moment, winning big cases on enforcement, whether that is fly tipping, whether that is antisocial behaviour, eviction orders, possession orders, and it is a huge amount of work that goes into that. Collaboration with the police, obviously, but a huge amount of work that goes into that from our lawyers here within the council as well. So a massive thank you to all of the team for what they are doing. Not that, I have to take credit for everything that goes on at the council, but, in my portfolio I do have the legal team, so I will just put that on there. Any other member wish to speak? No, very good. In which case the recommendations are on page 118 and 119. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Agenda item number 10 is the complaints and compliments policy, which I do wonder what the ratio is on the complaints versus compliments. My Facebook would suggest that it's certainly one way over the other. But I trust that members have had the opportunity to look at the policy. I would just draw people's particular attention to the core principles of the policy, of what we're trying to achieve here around ensuring accessibility. So all of our residents, all nearly 200,000 of them, and our partners and businesses, if they do have feedback, they must be able to reach the council and must be able to provide that feedback easily and in an accessible way. Fairness, I think empathy is a particularly important thing. How often have we heard from residents, or have we read letters or correspondence from the council where it lacks basic levels of empathy? I think we've addressed that in this policy, and in that commitment to continuous learning and improvement as part of the process. The complaint handling process, again, just to draw members' attentions to that, a 3-day resolution for urgent inquiries option, a 10-day resolution on a stage 1, 20 days on a stage 2, and then Ombudsman obviously remains open to any member of the public or any complainant to take forward as well. Does any member of the opposition, any leader of the opposition wish to... Oh, I'm disappointed. I thought this would be the one that everyone wanted to talk about. Any member of the Cabinet wish to speak on this? I feel bad. Shannon, do you have anything you want to talk about on this? Everyone's happy, right? So we're all ready to... Oh, go on. Compliment. Over to you.
It's a technical question. Maybe Councillor McGovern would be able to answer it directly. When someone decided to muck around the bins, so we'd have this Brentwood system, and people would be delighted with the rubbish piling up everywhere, but it's what they use in Brentwood, so it must be fine. Residents were legitimately making fair and formal complaints, but the council system wasn't putting them down as complaints. Have we changed this process? Because I know the bin service is working best ever, but if we ever slip up, we shouldn't be trying to do a bit of complaint laundering.
I'm pretty sure the register as complaints, but James Hendry will probably correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, happy to come in, Councillor. Thanks for the question. So, myself and my team routinely monitor complaint levels. We can monitor complaint resolution timescales, and following the changes to the service at the end of April, we are planning to bring back a further update on how the service change has gone and an update on performance and those sort of things to a Cabinet meeting later in the year. So there'll be an opportunity for Cabinet members to review things post service changes at that point.
Thank you. I'm sure scrutiny will want to look at this as well. And again, another thank you to Councillor Baker's committee for the work that they did. The recommendations, members, are on page 130. Yep. Everyone happy? Right. 130. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Agenda item 11, housing regulator governance arrangements. Councillor Brown.
Okay, yeah, it's not Gavin, it is me, but my microphone's broken. Even though I want to be quite succinct, because I'm appreciative of the number of item agendas we've got tonight, there's just a few things that I want to talk about to start with. Clearly, as part of our national government's priorities, they're looking at the way in which councils act as landlords, which effectively is what we are, what that housing stock has in terms of its standards, but also in the way in which we engage with residents as a landlord, and the way in which we have that partnership, and the way in which ultimately that relationship affects those families' lives and those residents' lives, and in the way in which we can improve that whole process. So there's just a few things I want to highlight. Obviously, we've under these new regulations for social housing since April 2025, and it's really important that we can demonstrate that we're following that governance and that we understand it and we can recognise the changes and that we have a robust way of reporting that back. When we think about Basildon and the size and scale of the landlord that it is, with the number of homes we have in our borough, and as an overall tenure, it's the largest type of homes in the borough are those owned by this council. So we have a huge responsibility to the number of residents that we have there in terms of being their landlord. It's important that part of that process, when we're looking at the way in which we conduct our repairs, the way we conduct our long-term maintenance programmes, the way we keep our common grounds around those areas, antisocial behaviour, the way we think about crime, all of these things come together to enable our residents to have the kind of home and the kind of family community that they're looking for. And so it's really important that we recognise the strength of their voices in this process, that each policy we have when it comes to housing and being a landlord, that their voice is at the heart of that, that we think about the way in which we consult with them, that we have a clear way of tracking the way in which we engage with them, of recording their issues, whether they're good, the bad, the ugly and everything else in between, that we are accountable for that, and that we find clear ways to allow those voices to be heard, because often we're not able to do that at present, and so we're doing quite a lot of work looking at the way in which we engage with our residents, and that the loudest voices aren't the only voices that we hear, and that we do work to better engage with those residents that we don't necessarily always hear from. I think that it's really important to highlight the fact that improvements are already evident in the way we're doing this. Our housing team covered almost 2,700 service requests last year, that our repairs have fallen, and obviously we're going to continue to look at the way in which we have our managed long-term programmes to ensure that our properties aren't just like our town centre managed decline, but rather we completely do an overhaul at thinking about our long-term planned works, what accommodation is no longer suitable for 21st century living, what accommodation needs serious repairs, and what just needs a little tweak here and there in order to get that property up to standard. I think there's a lot better robust in terms of governance that we can do, whether that's looking at the way in which our KPIs are managed, are reported, are scrutinised. And I think that we talked about Mike Baker earlier. Mike is going to be chair of scrutiny for housing as a whole, which brings together everything from temporary accommodation to Morgan Sindel, looking at the way in which our housing stock is managed, the way in which the whole of Kirsty's team and Jonathan Tizard's team come together to ensure that our housing stock and the way in which we are seen as a landlord is improved greatly. I think it's really important as well that we think about how this links into those 5 things that we're trying to achieve this year.
Which are?
He's off again. And I'm going to talk about 2 of them, which is better homes and safer communities. And I think when we're talking about homes, we need to be as a whole issue. It's not just about my favourite topic of conversation, which is a local plan and building houses. It's also recognising the housing stock that we have and the way in which that they can be better homes for Basildon people. And also we know when people have safer homes, we have safer communities, we have less antisocial behaviour, and we have less problems within those residents' communities. And we enable people to have secure homes where families can thrive. And that's at the heart of this whole policy. Thank you.
Very good. Does Any Leader of the Opposition? Councillor Barnes.
Just very quickly, I mean, and it is a, I suppose it's more of a specific point than a general comment about the policy, but one of the frustrations I know residents struggle with, and I certainly do as a ward councillor, is that often the repairs, we are often hitting the KPIs in that the repairs are taking place within the relevant timescale, but the actual repairs themselves are not effective, they're not done properly, or they've not been properly prepared for, so that the people are going out to site do not have the necessary tools or equipment to do the job properly. And I would like to see that better captured in the coming sort of municipal year, because I think that's an opportunity for the council to save an awful lot of money and time, which it's currently wasting on having contractors go out to site who either can't carry out the repair, or if they do, carry it out in to a poor standard. Thank you.
Yeah, what I would say is that obviously at the moment you saw that scrutiny committee that we had just before our May reset, that Councillor Emma Callaghan chaired, and the way in which she scrutinised the work that Morgan Sindel had done historically that had not been done before, and under your previous leader of the Conservative group had definitely never been looked at or questioned. And so you can see from that was our starting point about what we want to achieve this year. Jonathan's team definitely are looking at the way in which we work with Morgan Sindel and the way in which we can change some of those long-term repairs and those complicated repairs, and the way in which that is fed into that relationship. I'd just like to bring Jonathan in right now just to be able to comment on that. Thank you.
All right. One of the issues we are finding is the age of the stock and the fact that our contract is sort of 10 years old now. And the way that we approach more difficult repairs has to change. So we are looking at that. We are looking at things like a minor works team and a damp and mould task force team. But that involves a change to that contract. So there is obviously time involved with that. But we are working on that at the moment. Is that okay?
I also had a meeting this week with the Switchy team. Many of you all know the little things that are collecting data within their homes, and we're starting to look at how we can use that data better in order to predict some of the repairs that might be coming up in the future, and also to monitor the effectiveness of the repairs that are done. So we're definitely trying to widen that accountability, but also look for better ways of doing it. Morgan Sindel are on board for doing that. Jonathan's team are working for that, which will definitely feed into the outcomes when it comes to Kirsty's team.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we cut the number of repairs by 1,500 a month. We've got the watchdog coming back, and the KPIs being put correctly to where they should be. I think people miss out on the importance of this housing regulator. This was a quango, and I'm going to speak in my words, not the administration's words. I spell it, say it as is. This is a quango that's a bit like Ofsted, and they go round to local councils. We're not about helping you, we're about justifying their jobs. They don't care what the outcomes are. They have the power to make councils sell off housing stock, and we have tenants being homeless. And that is why it's absolutely critical this housing regulator government's arrangement item we have before us is dealt with. Because when I entered the Housing Post a year ago, this was not a subject to conversation, not a subject at all. So we are now at a position where if they start to knock on the door, at least we can and ah, where it was nothing. Don't even peek through the curtains. At least we can look them in the eye and start to show the housing regulator what we're doing. But we are not in a good place, but every day it gets better and better and better. And with Councillor Brown's experience as a teacher dealing with Ofsted, that's the best person placed to deal with these bureaucrats. I'd be far too blunt for them, far too blunt. And let's just not forget that why the housing the revenue account is really tight for pennies is because we had a Chancellor, George Osborne, who froze the rents thinking that was good for the people. It wasn't good for the people, it was good for him. Because in this borough, 2/3 of our tenants get some sort of housing benefit. So when you freeze the rents, It's less housing benefit the government has to pay out. That's less rent for the council. That's less money to do major works and major repairs. It's like where I live. They started doing the roofs 2 years ago and they're going around piecemeal because they're stretching the pennies as far as they can. And George Osborne never froze our rents and allowed it just to go up by the basic amount for them 3 years he done that freeze. We wouldn't be in such a tough position we're in. And then they have to cheat that government to give us this housing regulator without the funding to get the works done. This is difficult and we have to get this right because this Quango's got the power to say, see that estate where people live, we don't like it, you got to sell it and you got to find homes for people. Where do we find the money? Just to keep these bureaucrats in the job. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, and I agree, and we should never forget it was the last Labour government and Gordon Brown that introduced the Decent Home Standard that was bringing our council housing up to scratch, and then it was, as you say, the Cameron Osborne government that decided to tear millions of pounds out of the maintenance and repairs budget for council tenants, and that has had huge knock-on effects that we are now having to deal with now. Councillor Brown, do you want to wind up?
I know that Councillor Smith isn't too hot on bureaucracy, but what I'd say it's not about red tape, it's about being accountable, it's about being transparent, and it's about looking out for the interests of our tenants. In light of the fact that I think we need to be more accountable and we need to be more transparent, I think we'd like, on page 166, we've got the terms of reference for our, I call it PAD, Property Assessment and Development Board. You'll notice on there that we're going to need to make a slight change since Mr. Sparks no longer is with us at the council, and we now have Tina as our 151 officer. So I'd like to ensure that part of the recommendation is that to be amended. But when we're talking about accountability and transparency, I think it's really important that we have a member on that board, and I feel that I should be present as a cabinet member for housing on that board in order that we are accountable to our residents, because that is what we are as councillors. Our officers are accountable to us, I guess, but we're accountable to our residents. And if we're going to be more transparent and if we're going to show that this is in the interest of our tenants, it's important that we have that member representation upon that board. So I'd like to ensure that that's part of the recommendation tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that speaks to the point, doesn't it, which is that we have to, as part of the governance arrangement for this, we just have to learn the lessons of when you don't have members
Stuff gets done
on there, then things go wrong. There is 12,500 properties, whatever it is, in the borough. There's about 30 odd million pounds in the repairs budget that's going into it. There's 200 odd million pound in the HRA every year. Those residents have to have a voice on these issues, and then similarly, that's on the Morgan Sindel, and then similarly across all of our property and assets, whether it's our community centres, whatever it might be, there needs to be member representative as well, representation as well. So yeah, we don't need to do a formal amendment. We'll just change the core membership there to reflect Tina and Councillor Brown on that membership. Does any other member have anything to say on this? In which case the recommendation is on page 153. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 12 is the green guarantee and green flag status. Councillor McGowan, this is you.
Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this item. The word serendipity springs to mind. I like the word serendipity, so it springs to mind quite a lot, but it is particularly relevant on this one. And I'd like to welcome Councillor Andy Barnes, the new Conservative leader. You are indeed welcome, and it's quite apt that you are here this evening to hear this, because on your Facebook Live last week, I was one of only a few people who heard it, I should point out. He made the astounding and completely untrue claim that this administration was planning to build on Northlands Park. Came as a bit of a shock to me, I have to say. Well, this report well and truly nails that lie. I don't claim to know Councillor Barnes that well, but what I will say is what I've seen of how he operates, I don't believe he made it up. I believe someone told him that, who was completely wrong. I wouldn't want to speculate. But what I would say is it was completely wrong. Maybe in future he needs to think about who's giving him information, because there are some on his own side, and I say this in the spirit of comradely friendliness, that may not have your best interests at heart. I would also say that if you're going to make an allegation like that in a public forum or a public setting, you might want to check some of your facts. Because I was a little bit disappointed. I thought you were a little bit better than that, Councillor Barnes. And what I would say is that that looked like you were a graduate of the Phil Turner School of Fact Checking. And I think you definitely should be better than that. Anyways, let's turn to the matter in hand. This council is completely committed to protecting its green spaces. And under this green guarantee, it protects areas of council land from any future development, along with local nature reserves and sites of scientific interest, fields and trust sites and village greens, which are also protected anyway. We actually intend to go further than this and ensure that these green spaces are not just protected but enhanced. In what is becoming a theme of this administration, we listened to what our residents told us and we are now acting upon it. Yep. In addition, the green flag status will be explored for key green spaces in the borough. Green flag status is an international standard for well-managed parks and green spaces. It ensures they meet the highest standards of management and maintenance. I could go on, but there's a lengthy report in the agenda about how that works, how you apply for it, who can apply for it, what standards you need to meet. But we will be looking at that and get as many of our green spaces as possible given that status. The Green Guarantee will be at the heart of the local plan, and by designating much-loved green spaces as local green spaces in local plans and neighbourhood plans will give them a degree of protection from development they don't presently enjoy. And that's all I will say, but I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Very good. Thank you, Councillor McGowan. Any leader of the opposition wish to come in?
Of course he will.
I'll go with Councillor Brockman, because then you might have to react to that as well. Councillor Brockman.
Oh, I'm going to be fair on Andy. It's his first time, so I'm not going to pull any other game. But I'm going to pick on Aidan. You're saying about green spaces, so can I take it for the residents of Wickford that you're going to protect the Barn Hall area that has just come under speculative development, and the other green spaces around there, like around the Wick, and you're going to protect those as well? So let's see how far you can go on that. Thanks, Aidan.
I think I've made it quite clear what we are doing and what we're not doing. I'm not here to answer matters related to the local plan. Councillor Brown can do that, and if you've got questions specifically related to your ward that Councillor Brown is overseeing, then address them to her. I'm talking about the report in front of us.
Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. I had to come back on that. First of all, can I thank Councillor McGowan for all his supportive and constructive comments on my Facebook Live. Much appreciated. You'll forgive me if I don't take too many lectures on fact-checking issues from a party that spent a large chunk of an election campaign telling people there was going to be congestion charging on the A127, something that was complete and utter rubbish. But moving on to the matter at hand, it says it's a guarantee, but it doesn't guarantee anything. It has no sort of legal status at all. So I'm curious to know how the word guarantee actually applies to this. And with regards to the green flag scheme, given that we've spent a large chunk of this evening talking about how we need to save money, how we need to save expenditure by the council, do we think this is a good use, or you obviously do, but I would question whether this is a good use of council money, given that there's nothing in the green flag scheme that we couldn't do ourselves if we chose to do so. We could easily put these standards in and bring this about without paying loads of money into a scheme.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan.
Yeah. Interesting. He picks up on fact checking. You've not got off to a great start, Councillor Barnes, I'll say that for you. My background is journalism, as you know, so I do pride myself on fact-checking. I spent 30 years or so in journalism, 20-odd years at the Daily Mirror. I was never taken to the what is now Ipso, I can't remember what it was called before. I tell a lie, I was once by Myra Hindley, which I'm quite proud about, and she didn't win that particular one. So I think my record of fact-checking stands up pretty well, so I won't take any lectures on that. Nor will I take any lectures about building on green space from a Conservative, because your record in this borough on that doesn't stand up to much scrutiny, let's be honest. Whether it be Gloucester Park or almost everywhere south of the A127, you have built on green spaces. So, you know, if you're going to go down that route, let's be honest about it. The green flag scheme, you're saying we could do it ourselves. You've had 17 out of the last 20 years. You could have done it yourself. You didn't do it yourself. This is a very well-established, internationally recognised scheme. And he's, of course, talking about costing a fortune. It doesn't. Look at the figures in the report. I think I've covered everything. If I missed anything, I'm sorry.
Okay, I thank Councillor McGowan for that. I thank Councillor Barnes for his question as well. I would just point out, when you talk about there's no legal guarantee, apart from a local plan, because the local plan, I know it's an alien concept to the Conservative Party because you did everything possible since 1998 to stop this council from having one, but a local plan actually tells you where you can and can't build, and if you adopt one and the green space isn't in it, you can't build on it, and that's the legal guarantee. I'm starting to understand why the Conservative Party got themselves into the mess on speculative development that they did. But we are going to pursue that legal guarantee, which is known as a local plan. We're going to get that through on track, on timetable, and we're going to make sure that the green spaces that are not allocated in the local plan are protected, and residents will be able to have trust and confidence in that process. And when he talks about why would we do the green flag status, it just comes back to how annoying I find the fact that the Conservative Party here for 25 years, every other borough has green flag status. Every other borough is ambitious. Every other borough says we'll take an international recognition. But here we have a Conservative Party that says no, we don't want to do that. Why would we bother with that? When we could have had a youth zone for every 18 to 19 year old up to 25. Oh no, we're not going to do that. Why would we build a youth zone for young people? You lack so much ambition. I mean, we've all just, three of us have been away this week, and it's been so refreshing to speak to people who now look at Basildon and say, my God, that is a place we want to invest in, where we want to come and we want to put our money on the table, and we can see stuff happening and we can see ambition. You won't even put a bloody green flag up. I mean, it's so pathetic. Like, and I mean that because I like you in the truest sense of the word. Like, yeah. Sorry, I'm ranting, but Councillor Brown wanted to come back.
Yeah, the leader's rant about the local plan has stolen a few things I wanted to say. What I would say is our consultation on our green belt that we've had with our residents over this last year, it's 18.1, 18.2, or they're soon coming up 18.3. What it has shown us that yes, people value those green spaces, but what they value is green spaces that they can access, green spaces that they can use to walk their dog, play with their kids, go for a jog, just clear their mind, and the well-being value of having accessible green spaces, not just fields in the middle of nowhere that no one can walk across, that very few people can see, but green spaces that are accessible is what our residents are telling us they need, and that this is what it gives. Nobody says to some of our pristine beaches around the country, don't fly that blue flag, don't tell anyone that you've got a wonderful beach. Let's not tell anybody about that. It's a way of communicating with our residents that not only do we value these places, not only are we going to protect them, but we're going to maintain them. That James Henry and his team are going to ensure that those pride teams are there, ensuring that these are not just accessible places, but the kind of places that everyone wants to go to. That they want to access them, use them, and that we have pride in Basildon. That we're not ashamed of our parks, that they are places that people want to go. And I find it staggering that you think this is a waste of money, that people's well-being, that people's ability to enjoy this borough as a whole It's fine if you live in Billericay and you've got a beautiful park there, wonderful, but the rest of this borough deserves that too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the brass monkey in that park. Let's not forget that. I think this is quite a good idea. I'm glad Councillor McGowan explained it, because when I looked at the name of the item, green guarantee, no, I don't do that. But I'm glad he gave that explanation, so I can happily support that and endorse it. I think why the Conservatives take an issue with the council flying green flags, I think they're worried about reform, where they've got control of some, you know, outreaching councils that you might see flying over to somewhere in Scotland. And they've announced their first policy that they'll only fly the Union flag and across St George. And they've been taking down other flags. So if we start raising green flags on our parks, they might be worried Reform might steal their thunder on that issue. Well, I've no issue with flying the green flag. And I think quite seriously is that when you look at battles residents have fought against the council, such as Kentview Road, which is now in your ward, Mr Chairman, the residents got together. Is it not in your ward? I'm getting confused with the new Essex divisions that never happened. Sorry, I do apologise. Yes, in Pitsea South East ward. And it pulled the residents together. It took them a lot of aggravation, fighting against the council, just to save that park, and they got the community hall and everything else. But wouldn't it be easier to have this... Oh, now let's think. Was it the Monster Raving Looney Party, Councillor McGowan? No. Was it the SDP? No. Oh, the Tories, yes, that was it. WeBuildAnyPark.com. That was their policy at the time. Thank you for reminding me, Councillor McGowan. But it pulled, when these parks are threatened, it pulls the community together. Well, instead of the residents at war with the council, it's get the residents together to fill in the forms, you know, invite the mayor down, fly the flag and everything else. That's a great thing. What's wrong with that? It's pulling people together. You know, people who might not talk to one another because they're just minding their own business. This is a good thing. This is good for communities, pulling people together. And let's hope Reform don't get the wrong end of the stick, otherwise we'll have Farage down, flicking cigarettes everywhere, saying we're going to get these green flags down there, woke, mad, everything else. And you're quite right, Mr Chairman, I'll happily fly in with my brief.
Thank you. Councillor Power.
Just a point on the report as well. It does state that the Green Flag Community Award is free for community groups. And as you will all be aware, we have a number of Wombles groups, Friends of Parks groups, all sorts of groups that take pride in their areas and their green space across the borough. So I'm sure we as a council and the councillors and the ward council will happily support those groups to apply for that award to carry on taking pride in their areas as well.
I quite agree. Who doesn't love a Womble? The recommendations are on page 170. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Agenda item 13, the modified scheme for housing benefit and council tax reduction. This one is me. I assume it's not particularly controversial. This one went through various scrutiny committees. Basildon Council has always had a policy of going beyond the national standard for war disablement pensions and war widows pensions to be more favourable, and this policy is a continuation of that. In terms of the housing benefit and council tax reduction for those service personnel's families and widows who are left behind. As I said, this has been through scrutiny. We are not talking about huge sums of money here, in the region of around about £30,000 in terms of the reduction, but in my view as a Cabinet Member for Finance, I think it is the right thing to do to continue to provide that support for our service personnel's families. At this point, is there any comments from the opposition? No. Any comments from members of the committee? No. In which case the recommendation is on page 273. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Agenda item number 14 is the selective licensing of private sector housing. Councillor Brown.
So as a council, we've talked a lot tonight as a cabinet as well about the way in which the private sector housing is not, that market is not functioning in a way that is beneficial to our residents, whether that's in the cost of it or the quality of it. What this licensing scheme hopes to do is to improve the conditions of that private housing stock ensure that we reduce the antisocial behaviour in some of those areas, and that we hold our landlords to account in the way in which we are going to hold ourselves to account. At the moment, this is, to be perfectly frank, is at quite an early stage in terms of the data we're collecting to support this and what it can look like in the future. Something that is presently missing from the report that we will look to add when we bring this back to Cabinet and we've collected more data is our HMOs. Many of you will have had casework around HMOs and some of the antisocial behaviour and the difficulties that some of our residents have had because of the number of people living in some of those homes. So what we're looking at is a way in which of engaging with our private landlords to ensure that by taking on this type of scheme, we can in fact improve the stock, improve those relationships, help the private market work better, but also reduce antisocial behaviour around some of those areas. Evidence from other schemes around the country has been really positive in terms of improving the relationship between private landlords and the council, improving the relationships between private landlords and their tenants, length of tenure, improvement in quality. And so what we're hoping to do with this scheme is start to look at the ways in which we can do that. Martin, did you want to add anything to that? Thank you.
No, I think you've covered it all there. I should say that should any scheme come forward, the idea would there be self-financing, so it's encapsulated. That's just to reassure members.
Yeah, this is not a scheme that's going to cost the council loads of money. The way in which it is funded, as you can see in the report, is the money comes from those landlords. So the landlords pay in, and it helps the whole series work far more effectively. That we all know that good landlords have nothing to fear, and those landlords who perhaps need a little bit of help are going to be given that.
Very good. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would be remiss of me not to remind members, because it has been some time ago, the person who was championing this with me when we had the council before, former councillor Andrew Golden. He was my vice chairman in the Housing and Communities Committee. He strongly led on this issue. He also represented Never May Mould at the same time as me and popped off, I think, to Lee Chapel Northwold. Would that be correct? I think so, Councillor McGowan. And he named a case that was within Never May Mould. It was truly horrific. It was by a school where a sex offender was housed in a bedroom facing onto school. I won't go into any more because it's very unpleasant. But with these licensing powers, which Councillor Golden was leading on, would have given us this ability to protect vulnerable people from people who some hard landlords will take their cash and put them in the wrong place. So if you're a good landlord, yes, unfortunately we're going to hit you in the pocket, but we have to cover our costs. But for the bad landlords, sell up and go. Because this is our only control. And when I think members go around their wards talking to residents, I remember a lady about 18 months ago said to me, "Have you got a minute?" "Yeah, sure." She opened the front door and she was showing me all the repairs the landlord hadn't done and refused to do. But I spoke to Martin Howard, Environmental Health, and he had a slight change of tune and just got the very basics done. But with landlord licensing, it's bad news for bad landlords. We shouldn't be a friend of the Rigsbys. And it was terrible. The previous administration took the side of the Rigsbys over the hard-working, decent people in this borough.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Brown.
I think we also need to recognise that the number of our residents renting privately is growing in this borough. And although that we're saying that market doesn't fully work in terms of the cost of that and in the way in which it's regulated, it's definitely a sizable chunk of the borough live in private rented accommodation. And the complaints we have around some of those, particularly those private rented that are on our present estates where we own part of the housing stock and we don't own other parts of the housing stock, has been a huge growing problem. And by licensing this, we can work with them, with those landlords, particularly on our estates where we are the predominant landlord, to enable the housing stock as a whole to improve and the relationships and antisocial behaviour to decline.
Thank you. I always remember in COVID when it first happened, the amount, and of course you counselled them, but Shanna will appreciate this as well. The number of people who presented who were in insecure work and who didn't realise they had been in insecure work. And what became really abundantly clear was that they didn't have any rights. And the 0-hour contract and all the rest of it, and they were really, really struggling. And the reason I say that is we insist here as a council on making sure that we have protections in place for people who are our tenants as the landlord, and we also work in planning committees and others to build houses for people to buy. But renters need rights, and people in our borough who are renting need protections, and the state should do more than it has done in previous years to intervene. And if you look at our town centre, particularly in Basildon town centre, you know, the demolition is almost complete now on the Market Pavement site. They are about to begin on the 17th of June the breaking out of the development there for almost 500 flats. They are private rented flats. They will be PRS, 100% PRS scheme. There will be more flats coming into the town centre. There will be more housing coming in across the borough, and there will be a growing number of our people who will be in the private rented sector. So you know, I absolutely, I think it's, I don't know what the word is. It's serendipity. I don't know, but former councillor Gordon is getting what he wanted here. And now, thanks to this administration, he may get what he wanted on the Westgate car park as well eventually, because we all remember him jumping up and down on Channel 5. It was you know, who knew that he was such a genius that we should have been following him years and years ago. Visionary, that's the thing. Right, any more points on this? In which case, the recommendations are on page 281. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Agenda item 15 is the Basildon Borough Economic Development Strategy. Councillor Power.
Thank you. Basildon's at a turning point, and we can see the change happening across the borough. New homes are being built, local businesses and investors are queuing to be involved, as we saw this week, and our residents are accessing jobs fairs, training and new opportunities. This economic development strategy lays out a clear and ambitious vision for how we'll support local businesses, create more opportunities for residents and make Basildon a better place to live, work and raise their families. This isn't just about big numbers or grand plans, it's about the real on-the-ground impact. We're talking about thousands of new jobs, new homes and a town centre that will be full of life and culture, and we need to work together to achieve this. Basildon Borough already has a strong foundation. We are home to the largest economy in Essex, but we know we will still face challenges like skills gaps and infrastructure issues, and that's why we're going to focus on inclusive growth that brings together long-term benefits for all of our community. The strategy is built on key principles that focus on strengthening Basildon's economy and community. These include regenerating places to boost civic pride, attracting investment to support people and skills, and backing Basildon businesses. It also aims to diversify the economy, support cultural and community-led development, build strong and regional partnerships, and create an inclusive workplace with a resilient local supply chain. So the vision is simple: a thriving local economy that supports businesses, boosts education, employment, improves our town centres and protects the environments we live in. We want to make Basildon a place people are proud of with opportunities for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the opposition, Councillor Barnes?
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I don't think anybody, anywhere, any politician doesn't want economic growth, and I think, broadly speaking, there's a lot in this strategy that I support. One question: the national government's decision to increase national insurance for employers, business rate increases, high energy costs, do you accept that that is a hindrance to delivering what is in this document?
I'm happy to answer that. I think we are approaching the year anniversary since the general election. You stated there that you don't think there's any politician from any political party that wouldn't want to see economic growth. David Cameron, George Osborne, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss. None of them saw economic growth. Kemi Bottlejob is definitely not somebody who's ever going to see economic growth the way she carries on as well. So there are a whole plethora of politicians who genuinely don't want to see economic growth, and there's 14 years of evidence behind it. They just happen to wear blue rosettes. It's interesting that you say that the NICs rise and that the high energy prices that we're seeing is what's going to hinder business and make things fall. And yet we saw the fastest growth in the G7 under this Labour government in the last quarter, far exceeding the growth projections anywhere in Europe or in North America. And I think what's really important is that what hasn't fully yet been calculated into that is what we are seeing around housing and development and the growth that will come into the economy as a result of that. I should also point out when we're talking about this, if you want to see an example of people who are not really interested in delivering economic growth, let's talk about Essex County Council hoarding £140.4 million of Section 106 money that should be being spent right now on new roads, on schools, on GP surgeries, on public transport, but they are sat on it, hoarding it at County Hall, failing to spend it. And to be clear to Louise McKinley, she's got a few mentions tonight. She's running for mayor. I think she doesn't say a logo anywhere on a platform yet, but I believe she's running for the mayor. And just to be really clear, we got £6 million out the door last year in affordable housing contributions here in Basildon, which is, I think, more than they actually spent in Basildon on Section 106 monies last year. So they built a school, which just wasn't big enough, and they're going to have to go back and do that again. So I don't believe when I hear Conservative politicians, with the greatest of respect, talking about economic growth, I don't believe that you understand how it works, because there is simply no evidence that listening to a Conservative will generate any economic growth in terms of where we go. I think this report and this strategy is very, very good. I think we have to be very, very clear about Basildon and about the regeneration of Basildon. Basildon is an event-led regeneration, right? The arena is the thing that is driving the regeneration of Basildon. And that is where we have got to keep our focus, and that is what is going to ultimately lead to so much positivity and increased GVA across Basildon and across the wider area. I also think that point number 7 in this is very, very critical, which is about relationships with government and key regional partners. I can't understand, I mean I can understand it because it was money for the marginals, but I can't understand how, with the greatest of respect to our colleagues in Castle Point, they are sat there with 20 odd million pounds in levelling up money being spent in Castle Point when Basildon Town Centre was allowed to decline to the way that it was over the last 25 years. I've just spent the week, as I alluded to earlier on, sat at conferences listening to new towns all around the country talking about how they're spending £45 million of government grant on this and £50 million of government grant on that. And you sit there and think, why is Basildon not getting any of that money? Why don't we have that relation? We're all supposed to be happy because Craig Rimmer walked through Basildon Town Centre talking about £3 million for the arts that never materialised and was about 20 quid a year for the next 300 years. I mean, it was a complete nonsense in terms of no actual money coming out of Westminster in here. Now, that is in part because we have pretty ineffectual members of Parliament, and we have had for the last 25 years here, but it is also because we haven't had any bloody schemes to go forward to government and say, come and fund it, come and make it happen. So we have that now with the arena. We have the ability to go and say, this is a 30, 40, 50 million pound project. I've said before, taxpayers in Basildon are not funding it. The good news from this week is we don't have to, because there's lots of people who will. But having the economic development strategy aligned to what we are doing in Basildon Town Centre, an event-led regeneration, that will be something that will be incredibly positive. Because, as I've said it before, we are the biggest economy. I know you didn't hear the Mayor of Essex to be, or whatever she wants to call herself, talk about Basildon, and in this Greater Essex Day at UK Reef, Basildon wasn't mentioned, or there wasn't any mention at all of anything good going on here. I wish we took our money out and then they could see what would happen when you took £6 billion of Basildon money out of the economy in Essex. I think we'd start to be missed then. But when you look at that, that is all well and good. But people in Basildon do not feel like they are living in the biggest economy in Essex. Walking around our town centre, you do not feel like you are walking around the home of the largest economy on the Thames Estuary after Canary Wharf. So the ED strategy is fine. it has to now align to what we are doing, and the regeneration is the biggest catalyst to be able to take that forward. And I think we need to learn the lessons, right? Because the PITSI CDC is fine, right? It's a very good development, and it's a good regeneration scheme. I'm not convinced it has any real economic benefits for PITSI. I'm not convinced it was actually thought through as to how is this really going to benefit businesses and residents. It was, we have a building, let's do something with it. And that is not regeneration and economic development together. And I think we've got to learn that lesson, and this gives us the chance to do that. Any other comment? Councillor Smith, yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know why you keep picking on the Deputy Leader of Essex County Council. She was supposed to be a shoo-in for the Billericay and Basildon constituency. But they went very truly out of town. They got Dickie from Durham, so I've got to be a little bit less mean, because Councillor McKinley might think she's the shoo-in, but you never know who Tory Central Office is going to parachute in after, with careful consideration. We hear from the opposition about you're asking businesses to pay a bit more tax, even though we borrowed money to support them during COVID. That money has to be paid back, so quid pro quo, I would have thought. But your government, I'm not a big fan of them, but I'll call it as it is. Didn't you say British Steel? Because when we start building the town, start building the houses, we're going to need steel, and I'll always happily have British Steel. Because isn't that economic growth, that something made in this country is transferred to this country, transferred across this country, being used by local people to build things with? Isn't that good for economic growth? Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Leader. Wasn't Britain one of the first countries in Europe to get a trade deal with the President of America? I mean, we had that with Boris, Truss, Sunak. Couldn't get a deal at the White House. But Keir Starmer used a bit of British common sense, a bit of Clement Attlee about him, you know, blow smoke where it shouldn't be, and the President falls for it, hook, line and sinker. But that's clever. He's used his mind, like, from his days in the legal things, and he's got us a deal. Other countries around the world are very jealous of. You know, you might not like the President, but I think the Prime Minister scored a blinder there. And that is all a part of getting investment into Basildon. It's a stormy world, and with what we're putting forward, foreign investors, other investors, domestic investors see us as a good bet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I shall write or text Keir after this to tell me he has a new fan, Councillor Smith. But yeah, you are right to highlight the fact that it was the Labour government that has saved British Steel, and it has also been this Labour government that has got these trade deals over the line, and we have the fastest growth anywhere in the world at this moment in time as well. I've said it. I said it on Facebook Live earlier on. I'll say it again. The doomsters want to tell us that everything's terrible and that things are going from bad to worse. And yet here in Basildon, we can see every day Basildon is getting better. The NHS is going from strength to strength now as well. At the moment, we've got plans in place, or plans coming forward for an expansion at the hospital, as well as a new hospital in the town centre, as well as the CDC. So yeah, everywhere you look, Labour are doing brilliantly. I quite agree with you, Councillor Smith, as well. The recommendations, members, are on page 294. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Okay, agenda item 16 is the corporate asset disposal policy. Councillor Brown.
No, it's you.
Right. Here we go.
It's got my name on, like several others have, but this is you.
Very good. The report on page 313, you can tell we haven't been here all week, is listed out. It talks about the disposal of properties and units and the reasons for why the council is disposing of them. It also lists the best considerations and what we have to take into consideration as we go. Clearly, one of the main things that we have been talking about over the course of the last 12 months is how we are going to reduce the council's debt. That is a key focus for us, so that as we move into the new world of local government reorganisation, The council's debt profile is a lot lower than it is at this moment in time. We lived in a different world 5 or 6 years ago, particularly when we had a situation where the government allowed councils to be perhaps a little bit more creative on commercial acquisitions and to swap assets, and we've done that very successfully here in Basildon with the commercial asset acquisitions that we have made. The Conservative Party voted against every single one of them. They're now making over £3 million a year of profit, but we won't talk about that. But we are in a different world now, and because of the disaster that happened in Thurrock with the Conservative administration buying £1.5 billion worth of solar farms that didn't exist, the government decided to change the rules around how they went. How councils could and couldn't use commercial assets, and what you could and couldn't do in and out of borough. As a consequence of that, it is no longer prudent to necessarily keep a number of schemes or a number of developments within our gift, but similarly, I think it does also have to be said now that we can no longer build out housing schemes cheaper than the private sector can. So therefore it starts to become a question of, well, why are we doing this, and why don't we just allow the private sector to intervene? And we've seen joint ventures and partnerships, particularly the Hill Group, where we've got the Chapelgate development, the Broadmain development, the Pitsea development coming out of the ground as well. So there's opportunities for us to look at how we can further dispose of assets and also look at things like, as I say, JVs, investment partnerships, other things that we may want to take forward as well. Does any member of the opposition have any questions on this one? Councillor Barnes.
Yeah, I think it's the question that you normally ask when you're talking about disposing of assets, which is the protection of future revenue streams. Obviously, if we dispose of things, we know that these assets are currently generating income for the council. How do we ensure that we protect future income streams if we're going to get rid of those assets that are currently giving us a return?
Yeah, so that's the balance, right? So and look, every decision that we take, and we may take some later on this evening, has to be balanced between, can you pay back the loan to the bank, can you pay back the debt interest, and if possible, can you make a profit rent? And can that profit rent then be used to help fund services? So the reason we set up the Sempre Housing scheme, which the Labour Party supported even in opposition back 10 years ago, so I hope there's a lesson there about supporting things in opposition, but we supported it 10, 15 years ago, whenever it was because we could see that it was a means to be able to generate money through housing that's then not in the HRA but in the general fund to pay for essential day-to-day services. Clearly, we've done very well because I brought forward some very, very good schemes and I was the leader last time that are now generating significant sums of money for the council. But we then also need to think about when we move into LGR and the council won't exist in 2.5 years' time, we then need to think about whether or not it is right for us to keep hold of those assets, whether we could get more money out of them, could we do something more ambitious on them, so therefore retain them, because we'll have a bigger operating budget. With 30 million at the moment, will likely be a £300 million budget that we will operate under in a bigger unitary authority. So is it worth holding on to them now, not disposing of them? So that is part of the strategy as well. But then it is that thing around if we turn the taps off on some of these revenue streams, then we are going to have to look for savings elsewhere in the budget. And that has to be part of it. But overall, the council is obviously making significant debt repayments on the sums of money we are. I've always said I did not want us to spend £80 million on acquiring temporary accommodation stock. That's money that either should never have been had to be borrowed, or it should be money that was going into the regeneration of other things. But equally, I'm also aware that in year 3 it would have bankrupted the council if we did not get a grip of TA, and we heard earlier on that the strategy and the plan is working and we're starting to see it move in the right direction. So look, we will have to make a balance. What we can't do is a fire sale of assets because A, that's not right in terms of market conditions. We wouldn't get best value, and that is reflected in the report. But equally, we would have to have a phased approach to how we turn that off and what we would do elsewhere to reduce some money. But more importantly, looking at the budget as a whole, I do think now as we are heading towards LGR, there are things that perhaps if we were not coming to the end of our natural life as a council, we would be continuing because they are BAU things that we would always do. I think the budget setting this year is going to look very, very different, because I do think there is a lot of things that this council is doing that it no longer needs to do going into the 2028 new authority. I also think, I have to be clear with you, I think there will come a point in the not too distant future where decisions on major assets, major leases, major financial agreements will have to be made by a joint committee of the new authorities rather than just this council. So therefore we need to put ourselves in the strongest possible position with this policy to have at least looked at the market, made an assessment of the market. If we can dispose and we can reduce the debt profile, do it. If we think it's worth retaining some sites for future use, do it as well. But we need to do that on a case-by-case basis. And I think what this council has always been very, very good at, both Labour and Conservative, and Independent, obviously, has been to ensure that any and all decisions are underpinned by third-party advice, whether that has been DTZ, Cushman Wakefield, whether that's AY. We've always made sure, which has been absent in the governance arrangements of some authorities, that may or may not be £1.5 billion in debt. But we have always maintained that we've had that advice. We've used those third-party experts to give us advice. Is this the right thing to do? Does this have best value? Is the council getting the most bang for its buck? And we've been able to hang our hat on that. And so far, touch wood, it has gone to plan in terms of we've not had bad investments come forward. So I would give members that assurance as well. Any member of the Cabinet wish to comment on this? No, in which case the recommendation is on page 313. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Right. Agenda item 17 was due to be the Wickford Police Station Community Hub. That is going to come to our next meeting of Cabinet. So we're going to move on to agenda item 18, which is the BTCM transfer of control. Now, members will recall both this Cabinet and if you were part of the Policy and Resources Committee over the 2 years back from 2019 to 2021, this has been a labour of love for me. I want Basildon Council to own every single car park in Basildon Town Centre, and I want Basildon Council to be responsible for all of the public realm in Basildon Town Centre. That has never happened in the 76-year history of Basildon Borough Council, which is mental, to be honest. And if you spend even 10 minutes on Facebook, particularly on my profile, you will come to the conclusion that Basildon Council already owns every car park in Basildon Town Centre and is responsible for just about everything from the market to the pavements to everything else. We are not yet. So in front of members tonight is the transfer of control. So an enormous amount of work has gone into this, looking at covenants, looking at the state of buildings as well. And we have a 3-year plan that is listed here. And I think underpinning all of this, and we will need to look into this in some more detail once the legals are all transferred fully, is a full business plan for where we want to go to next. So clearly BTCM has staff, it has those staff have rights, and they have contracts of employment and all the rest of it. And then there will be anxiety, I'm sure, but we need to provide clarity and certainty to market traders and to others who work with the council, and we provide, or BTCM provides services to them as well. And we will bring forward that business plan in due course. But I'm hopeful that this is something that everybody and anybody could get on board with, because it's very clear that Basildon Council we've tried to control more of our town centre through acquisitions, and now if we are able to get control of the car parks and the public realm, we will be able to do even more on our terms. Because just to put this into context how mental this is, we can't even hang Christmas lights as a council on some street light poles because they're BTCM and not Basildon Council. Is a nonsense. It's just mad, and tonight it will end. Does any member of the opposition wish to speak on this? Everybody agrees this is the right thing to do. Good. Any cabinet member wish to talk about this? No? Very good. The recommendations are on page 322. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. Right. What was that, BTSM? Right. So, for clarity, for anybody who is still watching an hour and 36 minutes into proceedings tonight, or 2 hours and 36 minutes on if you join the Facebook Live at 6 o'clock as well. We are now having to take a vote on excluding the public and the press, which would mean that the YouTube channel is turned off. And the reason we do that is because we're about to talk about commercially sensitive information and we wish to protect the taxpayer so that we can ensure we get best value for money. So we are voting on excluding the public and the press from the rest of our proceedings. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Can I ask the cameras be turned off, please?